Welcome to The Self You Seek with Dr. Brendan. This podcast might just change your life. I'm Dr. Brendan Doherty, a medical doctor, psychiatrist, business owner, inner guidance coach, and fitness fanatic. On this show, I explore topics and engage with individuals to help you unlock your full potential. My mission is to support your journey towards self-actualization, complete well-being, and a life aligned with your authentic needs. There will be actionable insights, inspiring stories, and I will lean into my curiosity to get the story behind the person, understanding the deep truths and expertise of our guests. Get ready to feel empowered, and, if you desire, some information that might just change your life. And a quick reminder, this podcast is not a substitute for medical or mental health advice and should not be treated as such. The content here is for informational purposes only. Always consult with qualified medical and therapeutic professionals before making decisions related to your health and mental well-being. And now for the show. Hello and welcome to the Self You Seek podcast and this probably final episode in the first series, Recipes for Change. And it brings me great relief and happiness to come to this episode on acceptance. It's a kind of a change of frame and all that brings and all that feels like, because it's the opposite of striving. And I'll also say thank you very much if you have listened to all the episodes thus far. Really appreciate it, and I hope that they've brought you some sort of actionable or thoughtful insights into your life. We really appreciate it. I welcome you, Richard, again to the podcast. Appreciate your company through these episodes. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Pleasure as always to be here. And again, to reiterate, thanks for anyone who has joined us on this journey to date. It has been a lovely experience to go through. I've learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about recording experience, and I've learned a lot about Brendan. So feel very grateful at the end of this first series and excited to see what comes next.
You know what I think I'm going to take out of this? The difficulty is getting out what you want to get out, but also just relaxing into it. I'm a bit of a striver, a perfectionist, and I've had to let go of it, but I still feel the tension, and I hope that as we do this more, we can relax, because I think that's where the really good stuff comes.
Yeah, I think it's all learning. It's a huge learning curve for us both. I don't think any podcast or anything comes out fully formed. It takes a while for us to get used to the beats of each other and actually speaking to each other across microphones and all the different settings.
I wonder if we'll look back at this in, I don't know, a few years and go, oh my God, can't believe we put that out there.
I know. There's been a couple of times when I thought, maybe I've said a bit too much in this episode. But I think it's sort of in the spirit of being as authentic as possible and as honest to myself as possible. I don't think anything has crossed any lines yet.
Yeah, well, we've taken those bits out anyway. So
anything that our lawyers have said, please take this out, then I think, nobody will hear those apart from us. So that's good. But I'd like to see maybe a bit more of the Brendan side that I know, as opposed to maybe the host Brendan. There you go. A little challenge
Difficult
for you
balance.
there.
See how we go.
Forward. Yeah,
I accept that.
There we go. Oh, seamless.
Thank you. Well, what do we have for you today? We have a bit of probably a shorter podcast, and we'll just talk about why acceptance and what that is. Acceptance, what is it? Well, it might not seem like the most exciting aspect of change, but it really does hold a profound key to happiness. What we've done so far is we've talked about trying to make something different, either through radical change, incremental change, therapy, psychedelics, something to move the dial. But we're really saying this is an internal dial move. It's not actually not changing. It's a way of accepting your mind and your life just as it is. So it isn't a way of change, but it's also just saying everything is okay. And actually, it's a trap that a lot of optimizers or self-development people can get into, that we're always trying to make our lives better. whether it's happiness, getting new material possessions, altering our relationships, whatever it is, moving countries. But at the end of the day, probably what those changes mean to our overall life satisfaction is a lot less than an attitude that we take into it, which is to say things are actually good enough as they are, and I'm going to allow to unfold what happens without trying to alter the course of my life too radically. So that's why we thought it was important to put it in here, because we don't want to say that everyone needs to change their lives. We need to say that we hear about, the self you seek, having that full and complete fulfillment, having actualized your life. And when you do accept things as they are, often unexpected surprises come. And people might have heard also about the difference between your happiness being about the difference between your reality and what your expectations of life are. The bigger that gap is, the less happy or content you will be. So this is about accepting that things are as they are and being okay with that. And therefore you might actually be happier and being able to get on with life and feel less frustrated or like something's missing. I'm wondering if you've had any of these experiences in your life, Richard.
Yeah, I really like how you frame this. I guess, my big thing with acceptance is I think acceptance offers the possibility of change and growth in certain circumstances. I think there's lots of these things lots of things that we don't have control of over our life, lots of things we can affect. Yeah, can you hear that? Is that really clear? Oh.
We'll just continue. See how we go.
Okay. Yes. Well,
here's a funny moment.
Here's a good lesson in acceptance. My next door neighbours are going through a long period of renovations in their house, and they are good people, and they help us, and they are friends of my wife's family. So I just have to accept that and accept everything that comes with it, but also know that it won't be forever. It will just be for a certain period of time, and that there are also things that we get out of this relationship, but it doesn't have to be combative as the demolition crew tear on a Friday afternoon. But yeah, I think going back to my point, the power of acceptance offers abilities to put aside or maybe compartmentalize things which are potentially overwhelming or we don't want to admit are there, but accepting certain situations in life allows for growth in different directions. So I'm a big believer in it, and it can find its, you can look at it in so many different ways.
One of the things you said is that it doesn't actually preclude change. So we're not saying
No, absolutely.
accept and don't change anything. It's actually about a practice of accepting what's now and allowing change if that's what's coming.
Yeah,
You're not trying
absolutely.
to fight it. And if change is moving you in one direction, maybe just go with it and find a way to appreciate what change that is bringing, as opposed to if it's not what you planned, then it can be really frustrating because then you're trying to move in the other direction. But this is about allowing.
Yeah, and I think acceptance helps it brings clarity to a lot of situations. I think of situations in the past where maybe there has been an illness in the family or a close friend has been ill, and your body or your mind is trying to tell you to sort of almost push it away and be like, oh, this person will be fine. They'll be fine. It's okay. They'll be fine, which is a perfectly, is what our minds do. It tries to bring us to safety. But I think there is a certain clarity and a certain power in being able to say, okay, well, I accept the fact that this is what is happening at this moment. There is a good chance that this could go badly, and that can allow the space to think about, what if it does? What can I do? How can I be best prepared for these things, instead of pushing it away and being like, oh no, this will be fine, because unfortunately life sometimes is not fine, and sometimes, these things happen. On the positive side, there is also great power in that acceptance of like, oh, well, yeah, I do have enough. Or, that great question of, what if this were enough? Lots of people, again, you think about people who strive, or there's this general ethos of, you must always be pushing, you must always be, whether it's grind or hustle or making that next thing. And it's like, well, what if this were enough? What if I were happy? What if this is what I need in life? So yeah, there's a few different ways that this can go.
I think people are misaligned in what is enough. And when I say people, I mean myself as well.
Yes.
Because enough is not really to do with material possessions. It's probably not even where you live. It is more to do with things like how often you have good interactions with people, whether you can see the good in every moment, and whether you have enough to sort of stay safe and secure and get healthcare. It's not really about whether you have the jet ski, whether you don't have to work, or whether you have the fanciest food all the time. It's very different.
Yeah, and I think
but our minds are continually like getting us to push for these things kind of unconsciously.
Yeah, and I think particularly, in the world at the moment, I think, the idea of what if this were enough? It's like, well, I am safe and I have shelter and I live in a country which isn't ravaged by war and I have access to food, I have access to water and all the benefits of, Western modern life. And yeah, it's definitely a big period of reflection anyway. But yeah, I think this is one of those times where maybe a lot of us can actually think, well, yeah, maybe what I do have is enough.
And it won't be a surprise, the things that we potentially suggest and how to enact it. It's going to be pretty basic stuff. The trick is in actually doing it, because we can all say that gratitude practice, meditation, contemplation is useful, but actually doing it on a day-to-day basis is kind of tough. And particularly when there's always these reminders of people that have more than us.
Absolutely. Or those who have less than us. And yeah, the simple stuff sometimes is always the hardest. And I find myself knocking my head, keep banging into this wall where I'm like, why am I not getting the basics down? Why is even the basic things feeling so tough? But, that's part of living. That's part of being in the world.
Yeah. And then social media also is full of different things which we should do. What they say, this hack for this, biohacking or whatever it is to make $1 million or what it is. And we're constantly bombarded by that. But we always then, that becomes a reason why we're not happy. But then getting the basics down is actually probably 90% of even how you get to those things. It's eating sort of basic, decent food that's not processed, some sort of regular exercise, getting enough sleep, having decent relationships. It's probably a couple more I've missed, but we forget about that and it's not praised enough.
Absolutely. I think I can always look back at the times in my life where I think things were really ticking along nicely and I felt like I was in a really good groove. And there are themes which run through it. And I always know that I'm sleeping, I'm getting like regular, decent sleep, It sounds, I'm drinking lots of water, I'm exercising, I'm not spending most of the day looking at my phone, and I'm meditating in the morning and things like that. Just those things where I'm like, this is my core things I need to do to make myself feel good. And yet I still find myself in this ongoing challenge of, why don't I feel better? Or why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing this? And yeah, you've actually caught me on a day to day when I do feel quite like that. Even though I've been for a run and done a few things, there's other parts which have slackened off. So there we go.
And even there, like when we're not getting the basics, that it's okay to use these tools of acceptance. Like no one gets everything they want or need 100% of the time. And if that's making you miserable, then it's really important to look at that and just have little practices to realign.
Yep, I know that today I haven't done the things which make me feel good and make me feel more energized. But then I also accept the fact that, that's not, 100% of the time, 100% record is not achievable. So I can start again tomorrow, or I can start again after this recording. I can just be like, okay, the rest of the day I'm just trying to get back on track.
I like it. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about people where acceptance could be useful, probably is practical. On that note, new parents. Parents, it's a big shift, and I'm not a parent myself, so, but I've been around enough parents, and it's very obvious that the priorities shift. And I've had enough parents telling me that you never know what's coming, you can't predict it. And it's a big shock a lot of the time. So this is a great place where if you are a new parent, then just allow to happen what happened, because if you're going to try and fight a new child, it's going to not look so well. And so a lot of new parents have this period where they embrace acceptance. When they do, it seems to go a lot better.
Yep, sounds good. I just had to, if you hear me chuckling over the microphone, it's sort of like the audacity of two non-parents talking about acceptance in new parents. But yeah, I think that fits perfect. I can hear, collective parents who are listening being like, these guys, they've got some nerve talking about acceptance in new parents.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to be angry and disorganized as a parent. All we're saying is that if you're fighting it and trying to get everything else done, then, acceptance. New parents do really well when they can sort of like just let go.
Yeah, absolutely. Big shout out to all new parents and all parents in general listening, because it's not a job that I am seeking. And you have my eternal respect.
Amen. And the next category is already successful individuals, whatever that means, but you take it for how you might want it to mean. Those that have achieved a lot already, and embracing the accomplishments and acknowledging sufficiency can really lead to a happier outlook. And those people that are already successful often are the ones that are less happy, because they're always trying to push for more and more. It's like an insatiable appetite that the more you eat that delicious steak, the more steak you want. And if you don't get that delicious steak, then you become, as in fact, every night you've got whatever you want on your dinner plate.
Just to touch on a point, I think, the high achievers, the people who are always looking for that next big goal or big thing they want to tick off, it is a highway to sadness in terms of, at some point, what is your end goal? At some point, the professional footballer who's still trying to recreate their best form in their late 30s, like, what happens post-retirement? What do you do? And I think those people who admire those people who can have a successful career, whatever field, and then just disappear off into the wilderness and be like, yep, I've achieved what I wanted to. Now I'm just going to enjoy the rest of my life. And yeah.
You're like Ash Barty, just out of the top.
Fantastic example. Absolutely fantastic example. She, again, I think that's great. Really, because, she saw the fact that, things weren't the same. She was best female tennis player in the world, winning championships, winning Grand Slams. And she just knew, she was like, this isn't right. I just don't have the desire to do this anymore. And I can walk away from it at, relatively young age, having achieved more than most have. And very good example.
Smart person she is.
Yeah.
And there's this idea of like aimless pursuit. And what happens is that this is often when achievement is over rewarded as a child. So you don't have your true self accepted, and you have this sort of drilled into your subconscious that you must achieve in order to get love or acceptance or proximity, however you want to phrase it, but attachment. And then we find ourselves in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s or beyond, still trying to achieve to find love. If you're achieving to get a goal or you've got a deeper purpose, then yes, but those of you or us or whoever that are doing aimless pursuit and don't know why, this is probably the reason what's going on. And it's really important to look at that, and that's where acceptance can be super useful. On the other side of that, there are people that do recognize this early and want to just embrace the moment in life. Like we hear it all the time, seize the day, embrace the moment, live in the present. And it is actually a conscious choice. And people who do that are the ones that are accepting what's happening, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but not even later today, but like right now. And they're really able to just focus in on the moment. And that's, to me, that's kind of like enlightenment. Like there's nothing you're stressed about for the future. You're not living in the past. You're just there. Whatever happened, you kind of letting life live through you. And that's beautiful. So if you can make that change and do enough practices to allow that to happen, that's a beautiful example of acceptance.
Yeah, I think I guess that the Buddhist mantra of like, this is like the only time is the present. Like this is it. Like the time we are speaking now is, this is all that matters. There is nothing else apart from this moment. And again, it's one of these things I would love to live by and would love to, think about more in terms of like, this is it, this second right now, this conversation we're having, this is where I am. This is, no matter where I need to be after this, like this is this has got my attention and this is the only thing that matters.
Maybe we could somehow invent, although that's not very accepting, but if you could have like a present meter, just to like tell how many seconds or minutes or hours you're able to actually live in the present each day, would be freaking genius.
Yeah, and especially, not to labor this point, but especially when you think about how our world is built to just basically distract us, and how we have like these devices which are just like, hey, come and look at me. I've got something to tell you. You've got one new message. You've got one new spam email to check. Like it's, yeah. I had a wonderful run of meditating for about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 months in a row. And just that ability to set that intention and build that skill set of being able to come back to my breath, come back to the moment, and thinking about it now, and thinking about how good that was and how much of an important skill it was. I will, yeah. Again,
those were the days, eh?
Yeah, and just those things of yes, that was actually really important to me, and I do really need to get back on top of it in terms of my meditation practice is patchy at best at the moment, and I know that if I reset and do that and make sure it's a core part of my morning, like a real non-negotiable, then it only leads to better things for me.
I always think of this guy, I can't remember his name, but he's the champion of the 10% happier. He talks about the
Dan
meditation
Harris?
making you. I don't think it's Dan Harris. It's some other guy.
Okay.
Sam Harris, you mean?
Yeah, there's a dodgy Harris that I don't want to confuse.
Don't know.
Okay.
Probably lots of dodgy Harrises out there. Sorry,
there are probably a lot of dodgy Harrises out there. Sorry to any Harrises who may be listening. I'm not talking to you. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on before people start naming dodgy Harrises.
Sounds good. The last category that we have here is those, and it's related, harmonizing with their deeper desires. So if you've done a lot of reflection in your life and you really, you're able to step away, it's kind of acknowledging that our genuine desires differ from what we initially thought we wanted. So when you've done therapy or journaling or just been a lot of personal development processes, people can consciously decide to connect with things that are actually more true. And that is a process of accepting. So if you thought that you wanted to make $500,000 a year, you wanted to be, the head of a law firm or be a politician or be a sports star or move here or move there, and then you've done some reflection and you've decided that actually what I want is genuine connection or love, or I want to be in close contact with nature, or I would just want to sit down with a cup of tea every morning and read books, whatever it is, those people that are actually able to do that are people that are accepting what is actually deeper, on a deeper level. And most people, I would say, aren't necessarily in touch with that, or if they are in touch with it, they're constantly getting dragged away from it by other impulses within them. So yeah, these people that are able to do that's also a sort of a type of enlightenment, I think.
Yeah, and I think, that sort of acceptance can be quite scary. In particular, things like, am I in the right relationship? Are there things about my life where I've maybe been trying to hide it and I should, actually accept it and embrace, the person who I am, whether, whether you're talking about like sexuality or gender or, so many different things. But yeah, these are, and it's, again, it could be quite a scary process, but definitely an enlightening one.
I'm interested in this topic of spiritual awakening. I haven't had one. I don't propose to know much about it, but I've seen some interesting things recently. And one of the things I've heard is when people do go through a spiritual awakening is it's like you're standing on the edge of a black hole or an abyss, and you need to make the choice to go into that and accept whatever you are going to be like on the other side. So when you said just it can be quite scary, that's what came to mind.
Well, I hope you're not planning on going into any abysses anytime soon. That doesn't sound particularly, I don't know, welcoming.
No plans, but maybe the abyss is where the good stuff really lies, because the abyss and the scariness to go over that is to overcome your ego and the part of you which is pushing towards the things that you don't actually realize aren't necessary.
Very good. I just don't associate the word abyss with any sort of
Anything positive.
good vibe.
Yeah, sounds lovely. Go into an abyss.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's all today's talk on awakening. Anyway, let's move on to the benefits. It's always related to those people, or our previous section, but I like to have a separate section on it. So, all right, the benefits. Here we go. Drum roll. Acceptance is a mental shift offering efficiency and peace of mind. So it's like you can literally make a choice. You don't even need to do anything. I'm just going to accept. It's efficient. Like your happiness is in your hand. Your peace is in you can do it right now and you can feel so much better. Self-acceptance attracts like-minded individuals and fosters more genuine connections because people are drawn to authenticity and internal peace. What do you reckon about that one, Richard?
You caught me off guard with that one.
I think it was a bit evil, actually, yeah, because we haven't talked about this at all. But
no, but it's like, if I've made accepting a choice in my life, would draw other people towards me. Maybe there'd be like a shift in my general, I don't know, outgoing persona and things like that. Or people, good energy feeds good energy. But yeah, I'll trust you on this one.
Thank you. Yeah, well. At the same, when you accept something about yourself and you change, you might actually push some people away. But I figure that if you're drawing in, like people that you really sense it when someone's authentic, well, I do anyway. I'm really drawn to them.
Yeah.
And I might not like them but I still really appreciate authenticity. And I think when you accept who you are, then it's a superpower in a way.
Okay, yeah. When the way you've said it, the way you framed it there, I definitely agree. And who knows, maybe some people, my ego is running wild, but maybe some people think that way about me. I'd like to think.
Maybe. You've been on
maybe you were describing me. You said, you may not like them, but you're drawn to them. Yeah, here we go. It's all coming out now.
If you can't beat them,
podcast with them.
Yeah. Lovely. The next one is embracing what is, as in what is happening right now, leads to a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. And it's a lovely mindset to be in. So I see that as being a big pro. And also related to the very first thing we said, it's a cost-free approach. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to pay anything. You just do it. It requires only a change in perspective. So that was relatively short, but very powerful, I think, positives. Now we're going to talk about the negatives or the downsides. Acceptance can be an excuse to ignore dreams. And I think it's crucial to pursue them if you can. So sometimes people can just say, oh, well, I guess we've got to for me, it was stay in Sydney. I guess this is what life is. Whereas I knew deep down that wasn't right for me. I need to be away from a big city. So you kind of don't use it as an excuse, is what we're saying.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance between acceptance and accepting your lot in life. Yeah, it can be potentially a bit of a murky area, not murky, but a bit of a grey area between are you accepting something which allows growth in other areas, or are you just accepting that this is how life has got to be? And there is a stark difference in that.
I think there's a lot of nuance in how it's played out because there's so many competing or for example, in a relationship, you might not feel like it's the perfect relationship, but you accept what it is, whether it's, 70, 80, 90%. But some people will say you should never accept it unless it's the perfect relationship. It should just happen. It should just be easy. But my personal opinion is that it's a bit of a myth. But other people will say,
absolutely.
So
100%.
It's everyone's own experience and own take on it. But some level of acceptance is probably going to bring you more peace.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And, if things like, again, I guess relationships and those things, I think as a culture, we're brought up with this sort of notional fairy tale of what love is and what romance is. And, you watch films and TV and it's all these big sweeping things. And personally, I don't know how these things influence my idea of what a relationship or, what marriage or, lots of things are like. And it's, definitely not the case. And I think once I had a bit more maturity and a bit more things of there are things that me and my partner, me and my wife, like disagree on, and that's okay. There's things that, she does not like about me, and that's okay. And there's things that I might find, there's things that we're just not aligned on, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anything apart from two humans. But in a relationship, it's natural. And that thing of the perfect, 100%, no such thing as 100%. No, that is a complete myth. And I definitely agree with you on that one.
This is a list of negatives, of course. So I'm just going to phrase the other side of that if after some period of acceptance and feeling like, you've given it a go and you've really considered it and you don't think it's right, don't let acceptance be an excuse to settle, because it can be. Like, some people say, I'm just going to accept what it is. But, the worst case example is they're getting abused, or they're deeply unhappy and they're in a depression. Like, there's no point in continuing that if you're deeply depressed because of some sort of life circumstance.
And I think about those, a generation or two before us who, people who stay together for years and years and just, absolutely fucking hate each other, like, being completely honest. And it's just like, what sort of life is that? So, yeah.
I think the way to potentially differentiate is if what you need to do requires a bit of courage, then that's potentially a sign that you are settling. But if what you're doing by staying is kind of the easy option, that's also the easy option is not necessarily the right option.
And what even is the easy option? I mean, it's easy in that, like, this is my current state. Is that easy, or is that just your current state?
It could be courageous to stay in your current state as well, and to work through your issues, for instance, or how you think about things. Yeah.
Wow, what a grey area this is.
It really is. Yeah. I think what I'm getting at is that don't let it be a cop-out. I think it takes some serious reflection and potentially the help of outsiders. But if you're able to differentiate that you're not doing something because of a little bit of fear or the need to embrace courage, then it's possible that you might be accepting something that actually needs to be changed.
100%.
All right. Well, that's pretty much the list of negatives. Let's get on to how to practice acceptance, or some ideas about how you might go about this. Did you want to open this? I mean, I've got the list in front of me that I've sort of done, but I'm wondering if anything comes to mind that you wanted to bring up.
I mean, the obvious one to me is, and again, to labour the point, is maybe consider building a meditation practice, learning those skills. There are hundreds and hundreds of, if not thousands of different options. But I think wherever you seek your meditation, I think the skills that you learn in building a practice really can help with challenges in life, or building that sort of mindset of, I'll use an example. I think before I built a solid foundation in terms of a meditation practice, one which is not happening at the moment, but I was very quick to anger, but I could get wound up quite easily. I was quite highly strung, shall we say. And I'm still a work in progress on that front. But there was, one of the big things I could see over a period of time is like, it was a real mindset shift in like, okay, well, this is happening right now. I can't do anything about it apart from accept the fact that it's happening, and what can we do? And it's a pretty valuable skill which has really helped me over the last few years, particularly I think in the case of COVID, that whole period, which a lot of people, it wasn't fun. And I think there's still a lot of, unspoken of trauma about it. But I remember those first couple of days when it was like, oh, something's happening here. And it was sort of, the news was starting to get a bit more serious. And then it was like, okay, they've called a press conference, Prime Minister's there, they're talking like lockdowns and, what you can and can't do. And it was, huge, life-changing moments. But it was in that moment, it's like, okay, right, this has happened. What do we need to do? What can we get? Is there anything I need to do? Is there any new skills I need to learn? And things like that. How I ended up learning how to drive was because of COVID. But again, it's those things of in the moment, I was like, okay, this has happened. clearly it's not ideal, but what can we do? What do we need to do in this moment to get going? Bit of a long-winded one.
Well, I'll echo the importance. I think you've hit on the importance of mindfulness and meditation, because really, you might have noticed that we've equated acceptance in some ways to present moment living. And when we are accepting, we're actually bringing ourselves more into the moment. Whereas if we're not accepting, we're looking at something in the future, or we're living in the past. So you're either worried about what's going to happen in the future, or you're striving for something in the future, or you're getting bitter about what hasn't happened in the past or something to do with that. And when you're engaging in meditation and mindfulness, you're actually just bringing that a lot closer to the present moment. So it's an active practice and acceptance, whether you're actually meditating on acceptance or not. So it's really a foundational tool, I think, for learning how to accept. One of the things that's really needed in order to accept, or should be done before acceptance, is to engage. We've talked about it before in self-exploration and deep inquiry. So if you don't know what's really deep inside you and what you actually want, then how are you to accept that that's what you need? So again, surprise therapy, self-development practices, psychedelics, if that's what you're into, journaling, whatever it is, understanding your core values, what it is that you actually crave deeply inside is really important. And then you can actually accept that what you have right now is probably enough, I expect.
I was actually set myself a challenge for this episode not to be the first person to say, have you considered going to therapy? So thank you, Brendan, for bringing that up. But yeah, again, of course, I'm going to say this, but it rings true for me, and it rings true with people I see in my practice, that therapy is a great space to explore these things. It's a great space to actually work out what it is that you want. What is it that you're afraid of? Is there anything that you might not be able to say outside the room that you could say in the room? And, that's where profound change can begin.
We've unleashed him now.
I know. Well done. Well done. Yeah. He's going to be talking about therapy for the rest of the episode now.
No, it had to come up. And in therapy or by yourself, another process that's really important, particularly if you're probably younger and don't know yourself quite as well, is to engage in trial and error. Because if you don't do that, like if you don't try a few new experiences, you can't really reveal what truly matters and what doesn't. So it's really important to step out of your comfort zone and give things a crack. Some might stick, some won't, and you'll learn a lot. And then eventually you might come to accept that what you have or what you've come to be is actually enough. The next step, tactic, I should say, is what I'd call like a moment of pause. And this is along the lines of the getting towards the present. So it can be during the day, like have a moment of pause, like setting your alarm 3 times a day and having a moment, just taking a few deep breaths and really grounding yourself in what's going around you, what you can see, what you can feel, what you can hear, and just accepting that. Check in with yourself, see how you feel. That can be really a useful practice, because some people don't do that all day. They can just forget, and they're always caught up on what they should be doing, not actually what's happening. But a moment of pause is also useful before you're making decisions. So if you're trying to engage in a radical or incremental shift or doing anything, just having that moment before and saying, does this align with my values and actually what I truly need?
Take that deep breath before you send the email or before you reply to the text.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, moments of pause have many good applications. Gratitude practices. So this is a pretty key skill as well, I'd argue. Very good research around this. If you're engaging in the process just about being thankful for what is, you're going to have many more positive emotions and a better life. It can be pretty, #gratitude-y, cringy for some people, but I would encourage you, even if you find it cringy, to just frickin' do it, because it does make your life better. And there's actually good examples. Like here in Bali, you walk around and you see people are super happy, and despite not having much. And this is a case with a lot of other cultures as well. But what I realize is that they have a daily gratitude to their gods, their Hindu gods, and they find contentment in their present circumstances. They thank the world for what is, and they don't worry about what is not. And they have much less than Westerners, obviously, just in terms of material possessions. But they look, in general, 10 times happier. So I think embrace gratitude.
And I think if you go into a gratitude practice with the sense of this is what I am thankful for, not the lens of this is what I should feel bad for because other people don't have what I have, that's where I think there's a much, that's where the good path goes. Growing up in the Catholic Church, you're often made to feel terrible about the fact that there are people in the world who are doing worse than you and us, and that is true. But also it gets to a point where it's like, well, what can I do about this bad feeling that I have, instead of, okay, well, if I am actually grateful for what I do have in my life, instead of feeling bad for what I do have in my life, then I can also affect positive change in other ways.
Yeah, that's an interesting subtle shift, but I like it. I wish I had something smart to say about that.
No, it's all good. It's just, the remnants of my Catholic guilt lingering.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's people listening that completely identify with it too. Yeah.
I say the remnants of my Catholic guilt lingering. I think it might be gone. We shall see. Sometimes it peaks up, but this is what nearly 10 years in therapy does. It just sort of rattles away at it.
Your internal reality depends on which lens you look through. And we know this so well now that whatever your self-talk is, honestly, is going to relate to how you feel about the world. And it's a CBT principle. It's if feelings follow thoughts. So if you say, I am okay and I have what I need and I'm thankful for the food on my table, the roof on my head, then you're going to feel good. But if you think about what is not and what's not happening or what could be, then you're going to have the feelings of envy or dissatisfaction or whatever it is. So yeah, embrace the gratitude. For those skeptics, it doesn't need to be anything that's not happening. Like, don't make it up. Just try and see the good in something. Because if you are in a genuine shitty situation, it's okay to feel shitty about it. But by seeing a little bit of what is good, and there's always something good, then it can just help you cope in those moments as well. And you're still allowed the shitty feelings. It's just overall, if you're embracing gratitude more often than not, you're going to have a better time.
And I think that's a really important point because, again, when you start talking about gratitude, you mention that sort of like #grateful, #gratitude culture, which is something I definitely push back against, and something which I find quite difficult to just see or encounter because it's not real. Because it's a presentation of what that person wants the world to see. But I think meditation app that I use, sometimes gratitude practice pops up once every couple of weeks, and it's always a nice reminder of what I do have, and I always feel better after as well. Like, there you go. Some anecdotal feedback for you on gratitude. Put that in.
Didn't believe it before.
Exactly.
Or now.
There you go. It'll be in the Lancet next week. Man feels better after gratitude practice. A study of one.
Anecdotal based medicine.
N equals 1, 100% satisfaction record.
Nailed it.
There we go. And the Nobel Prize goes to...
And world happiness and peace is...
There we go. We've cracked it. We've cracked happiness.
Brilliant. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, if you're really unhappy and things aren't working well, here's something that I'd suggest. It's called a temporary acceptance period. So it's trying committing to, because often we have this debate in ourselves and we get stuck in this cycle of thinking of what else we need. But that's pretty dangerous because you never get out of that feeling of needing more. So, but I think it's particularly important in, like, if you're satisfied with something and undissatisfied with something like a job or relationship or where you live, just make a commitment to accept it in all its bad and weird bits for a period of, say, 1 to 3 months or whatever you choose, whatever, and then really just banish all thoughts. Tell yourself you're not going to entertain any other thoughts for that period of time. You're not going to plan anything, and just go all in for what that thing is, right, for the next few months. Because when you do that, you allow that experience to open up. And if you don't do that, then you're actually stopping possibilities from opening. You're closing them off, probably subconsciously. So giving yourself that period of whatever it is to really do what you need to do and accept what's in front of you 100%, you might actually find that it becomes great and you're happy with it. And it was actually kind of your own mental processes that were blocking you from happiness within that situation?
Yeah, I think a big part of this is almost giving yourself permission to feel that way as well, in terms of like, okay, this could potentially be shit for a bit. I'm going to get through it, but this could just be shit for a while. And it's not always going to be shit. And hopefully at the other end of it, there are things about myself which I have learned, and there's other things other paths which I can take. But yeah, the permission to actually feel that. I guess permission is another form of acceptance in this sort of framing.
Yeah, I think permit and accept that it's not going to change for a while can be very powerful, because that allows things other than the shitness to come through.
Yeah, and again, I think about that think about an example of like, whether it's a diagnosis or, whatever, and it's like, okay, well, this is it. Like, this is it. You can't change this, but what can we do around the outside of it? Yeah.
That's something that you can't really change either way. That just is, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And also, if you're worried that if you go into this type of temporary acceptance and you're going to fool yourself, don't worry about that. There'll still be a little voice inside you that tells you need to change if you really do need to change. So try and go in with it wholeheartedly if you can. Well, I think this is coming to the end of the list, but a really important concept here is also overcoming your own judgment and criticism. So acceptance extends beyond ourselves, and it influences how we treat others and engage with the world. So it can be really good to commit to a week of avoiding negative self-talk and practicing things like loving kindness meditation, which you can look up online if you want to know more about it. But being kinder to yourself and others actually gives you a lot of happiness, and it can take away a lot of negative thoughts about your situation. And the less we judge ourselves, the less we're going to judge our circumstances and our world. And it can be another key to unlock some satisfaction.
Yeah, I love this as a final point. I think the key to any growth and the key to any lasting happiness and lasting change is kindness to oneself. It's very hard for people to accept sometimes that, you can be kind to yourself, or you can love yourself, and loving yourself in a way which is healthy and not in a way which hurts other people or excludes other people. Because if you don't love yourself at the end of the day, how can you love anyone else if you don't love yourself first? And sometimes, sometimes the hardest people to love is ourselves. And it's a journey that I've certainly been on in the past. And yeah, being kind to yourself can take many forms. And it's something I practice a lot myself. It's something I practice a lot with my clients. I see some clients, and the suggestion of like, be a bit kinder to yourself when you hear some of the talk in the rooms and stuff like that. And again, that permission, when you get in that, also offering that permission to be kinder to yourself. Yeah, it can be something where if we think we are playing certain roles or we've been brought up in certain ways, being kind to oneself can be maybe a bit seen as self-indulgent, or other silly phrases. But yeah, be kind to yourself, everyone.
Yes, love yourself, love others.
Love you, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, today's episode is a short episode. I think I will still do the meditation, but I do want to make a point on the difference between acceptance and resignation. We kind of touched on it before, but I'm going to repeat it. And it's really important to differentiate between the two. Acceptance empowers us to make informed choices and find contentment in the present, while resignation involves giving up on our desires and aspirations. So embracing acceptance doesn't mean giving up on dreams. It means fostering a sense of contentment and alignment with our genuine desires. So embracing acceptance isn't about settling or giving up on dreams. It's a path to genuine contentment. It's about acknowledging your present, aligning your expectations, and making choices that reflect your authentic desires. And acceptance doesn't have to be a life sentence. It can empower you to make changes confidently if needed. So it does work with our theme of change. It is an absolute recipe for change, and it works well with everything else. Any final comments, Richard?
If there have been things that we've been talking about today which have struck a chord, know that you are brave enough to make these changes. Know that you are brave enough to accept situations that may not be good for you or may need changing. that can be scary, but the power that lies behind it can be life-changing. And I think this has been a really nice way to round off the first series. And I just want to say, thank you for inviting me along on this journey. And I really enjoyed it. And here's to many more.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for the company and the insights and the wise words. And I will also echo one of your points there that people have listened to these episodes and are making changes or considering changes or accepting or whatever they're doing. Reach out, let us know. There will be an email address in the show notes, or reach out on social media at It's Dr. Brendan or at Richard Brown Counsellor. I would love to hear from you, and also to take, thoughts about what we could talk about in future. All is welcome.
Absolutely. I would love to hear people's feedback on the show, positive, negative, constructive. It's been a real pleasure doing this, and we are both always looking to learn and looking to improve and carry on the journey. A note on the socials, Richard Brown Counsellor is all one word, and it's Brown with an E on the end. So if you find It's Dr. Brendan, you will find me very close by.
Absolutely. Alrighty, with that, we'll wrap up. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure. Onwards.
Thank you for joining me, Dr. Brendan, on The Self You Seek. This podcast might just change your life. We hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed creating it. And if you found value in today's episode, please consider following and subscribing on our YouTube channel and your preferred podcast platform. Your support is invaluable to us. And please share this podcast with your nearest and dearest, so they too can live their best, most actualized lives.